friends. This is Tash with Unwritten Rules of the Road. Happy Sunday. We have an amazing special guest today, Elizabeth Inglese from Yes Music Productions. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Tosh. Midday on a Sunday, so not goth of us.
Yes, I know. So you have like kind of like I like that you have like the cave and the twinkly lights in the background. So
Yes, we got to keep it a little macabre as we can, you know.
yes. So I'm excited to have you on our stream. I the first time actually I was introduced to Yes Music was through Yasha. Ali was having us stay with Yasha when Alice played at Mechanismus. And that's the first time he was like, "You've got to like check out Yes Music Productions. They're amazing." And then I got to meet you when you came to our show when we played with System Sin.
hmm
And I
hmm
thought that was just really, really cool. Like that was my first impression was that, this wasn't even a show that you put on, but you were coming out to support. Um,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, and I mean, and that's kind of like how this whole thing started. Not to like get too far ahead of this conversation, but
yeah,
we were always just out there anyway, or just always going online saying like, "Holy crap, there's this amazing band, go see them." Like, what are you doing tonight? You should go see, this up and coming band or this huge tour. Who's going? And not just producing our own shows, but being out there and supporting other shows. And it's just because we love the music. So that's the drive. And yeah, and you guys are fabulous, by the way. That was just this.
thank
I think it
you.
was Funhouse, right, in Seattle. It was like
hmm
that small stage, drums, just very tribal. And I was like kudos to you, by the way, in the band, like just blown away with that performance. So yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think that's really amazing. I mean, that's you don't always see that in communities. Like sometimes promoters can be competitive, and I feel like maybe that's why you have a really healthy community in Seattle, I imagine.
Yes, I've heard a few people say, and I'm so bad at these, like the sayings. What is it, like high tide, right? Like all ships rise on the high tide, or something like that. So
Yeah.
basically, like if we're all doing well, the city as a collective will do well. So if Mechanismus is producing this amazing festival, and we've got our, a couple shows a month, and the dance nights that are happening across the city, if we all just like, plug each other and support each other's events, it just like a weak community will cause for us all to fail. So, and even if it's a situation where, we have dueling events on a night, well, how can we, run a promo, like, show your ticket from this to get $2 off there and vice versa. And, ours can be the pre-party and that can be the after funk or whatever you want to call it. So that way everybody gets a little bit of a piece of the pie. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think
I think that's awesome. Sorry, go ahead.
around the time when we all met, Ali was like the go-to. He was like the one-stop shop for everything dark music in town. Mechanismus, everything from like the emo post-punk to like the ragey funker vote industrial. And so I think he was kind of glad to have some new promoters come in and take a little bit of the weight off of his shoulders to take on some of that more like the dark wave, some of the more like goth rock bands and stuff like that. And we're all still a family and support him. And then that's how you ended up staying with Yasha's, because this is what we do.
Yeah.
Like we need lodging, everybody, in community stand up and help out or whatever. So yep.
I love that. I mean, what do you think first sparked your love of live music? Like, was it like your first show, or was there anything in particular that started that?
I think well, it may all go all the way back to like age 8 or so. Like I grew up in New York, and my mother first concert I ever went to was like Janet Jackson. And I basically came up listening to the music my mother did. Paula Abdul, we saw Color Me Bad, and like Robert Palmer and all those like sort of dancey bands, Cher, so like just like the dancey music was like kind of my cornerstone coming up as a kid. And then later on as a teenager listening to Typo Negative and like White Zombie and Alice in Chains, and then getting into hip hop. And then like also like my mother's listening to like Donna Summer somewhere and Whitney Houston. So all along I'm like listening like this music, right, coming up as a kid. And then when when I moved to Seattle, one of my first concerts was going to see Time Cop, I believe it was Time Cop 1983, who I'm seeing in like a week here in Seattle, like retro synthwave. Love it. Opening for him was Corinne, who we've produced a few times, duo out of Philadelphia. And I actually got myself there early enough to see the opener which that's a whole other conversation one day about getting yourself there early enough to see the opener. But I saw them and they just like blew me away. And I was like, oh my gosh. And the music was just dancey, but it was moody. And I think that was the point when I had moved to Seattle where I saw a show and I was just blown away with how dancey and dark the music was. And I was like, I just want more of this. And I was there by myself. I had just moved here. I didn't know anybody. And I just like went up and approached them and I said, hi, Morgie and Trey. Probably don't remember that. And I had just moved here from Jersey. So I was like, oh my God, I could have been seeing you guys in Philly. But it took me to go all the way to Seattle to see it. But like, I think it was like that show and that moment in Seattle anyway, which like really was the impetus for me to just go out to concerts here. And like, aside from like back in the day, I was married, maybe I didn't go to concerts as much, but I think that was the event in Seattle that started me really just going to concerts. Didn't know anybody, bought the ticket, met people, eventually met Yasha going to concerts, and round and round we go. We've met everybody else now, and so forth. But I think that was that moment where I was like, I want to be around this like all the time. Like end of the work week, like I'm gonna go out and I'm just gonna like listen to some music and just like whatever happens, the dancing, the the bobbing of the head, maybe a drink, maybe saying hi to whoever, dancing with a person, but it was just like, it was like a feeling, right? And so that was like, and the rest is history, I guess.
I think that's amazing because when I first met you, you really like brought so much joy to the room. That's the best way I can describe it. Like you really did. Like you could tell that you really loved the experience of being at the show. And I mean, yeah, I feel like with music promotion that you absolutely have to love what you're doing, right?
Yes. And I would say like every show, I do have a military background, and I feel like every show, it's like a military operation where things can change. You have to be able to think quick on your feet. And I love the intensity of that situation where it's, it's game time, right? It's everything. It's like Christmas Day, like leading up to this culminating moment. We've done everything we can do. We've planned, and maybe something's going to go awry. Like we had a band get locked in the green room. I'm not going to drop any names, but if they watch this and listen to this, they're going to probably kill me for saying this later. But like situations like that, right? Or who forgot to bring what or didn't put what in the tech writer or has an allergy to this, or whoever the headliner's caught in traffic and you're like, all right, cool, let's think on our feet, let's still get this thing done. And I just love that, the energy of that whole moment where we're having to like still make it all happen. And then when you see the fans show up, whether it be 20 like our first show or whatever, to like, let's say 200 a sellout, or like at one of our local independent venues, and to see them all have that same reaction to that band that I had way back in the day before I even started doing this like live music thing, to see them have that same like innate reaction, that just sort of euphoric like moment of bliss. I'm like, yes. Like that's what we wanted, all that work up, and to just go through that whole like living in that moment and the experience. It just, for me, yeah, it's a very like joyous thing that it's kind of like not like any other, I would argue. And I've not done everything in life, but I would say that it's unique in and of itself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, actually, one something that you mentioned that I wanted to ask about is, um, like you mentioned, like when a band has like 20 people there, like it's a first time.
Mhm.
Like what are the feelings? Because I know that sometimes there can be a lot of pressure to like fill a room and have
Mhm.
a certain number of heads. Like how do you feel as a promoter when there's a smaller number of attendees, like when that happens?
Well, I would say our first ever show, when people just showed up, period, I was like, oh, people are here. They actually know about this. Like, wow. Like, and I think our first show ever was coming out of the pandemic, 2021. Our first like actual show, like on our own, by ourselves, in person, was like masked show Hollows album release in Seattle when they were still living here before they went to warmer weather. But just to see people showing up, like I was like, oh my gosh, like this is like working. Like we organized a thing, we talked about it online, and like they're here. And like so, whether it's like 5 people or 500, we're just glad people were there. Moving forward to like later on, where you start to have like these expectations of who should be showing up. I would say nowadays, like if you're ever at one of our shows, you see me bouncing around everywhere, it's because I'm talking to the door, like what are the sales looking like? Because now I'm calculating, like how much money are we losing, how much money is the band making, like stuff like that. I'm like tabulating as I'm like, but also like, hi, hospitality, and like talking to people and all that. But it's one of those things where there's so many different things that could come into why maybe a show doesn't do well or doesn't or does very well, where there could be competing nights. A major tour rolls into town. Thank you, Skinny Puppy, for announcing a tour on the same day. where we've got small to mid-range artists coming through, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes we can reschedule, sometimes we can't. So, I think at that moment you just do the best you can in that kind of a situation. And and coming up, and when I was very novice doing this, we worked with bands who were not novice. They were like I'm sorry, am I getting that wrong? Wait, novice means that you know what you're doing. When we didn't know what we were doing, and you had like these like pro bands coming in, they're like, whether we've got 500 people or five, we will put on the same exact show. And I was like, oh, thank you. And they're not going to act like silly on stage because only five people show up, and you still give that same energy, and you still are very happy and optimistic and promising, and still do good marketing and do your good due diligence with all of your patrons who come to the show. And I think that positivity can just be infectious, to where it's like, okay, I'm not gonna let this get me down. I'm not gonna go online and and all that kind of thing. And I think at the end of the day, the bands will even be thankful. They'll say, well, maybe we didn't have the best turnout, we didn't make the most amount of money, but we had this great experience because of like this energy you brought, the positivity, the professionalism. And I think sometimes that's like the best we can do, in this industry, is that just keep our chins up. And keep, like driving forward. But yeah, sorry, that was kind of like a long-winded answer, but I think hopefully that answered your question on that one.
No, I love it. Thank you for sharing that. It's something like, and I love your positive attitude about that. I feel like sometimes, it's like you as an artist, if you're fortunate, you will partner with an amazing promoter like yourself who has that positivity because, like you said, there can be factors out of control. We did experience the Skinny Puppy tour, um like X Factor on one of our
So
tours last
people did
year.
all across the country, I think, in that one,
Yeah, we
right?
were like, oh, we have all the same dates for like half the tour. It just happens,
Yeah,
But
yeah.
sometimes actually I've had shows because I do all the booking for the band, but sometimes I've had shows where there is no promoter, it's just like me. And I'm not even in that city. So, yeah, I guess a question I have for you is like, what do you like to see from artists when they're working with you on like promoting a show? Like, what are things that we can do as artists to help out with that?
Oh my gosh, just the and I know it's a lot, right? Because you also have to like write music and practice it and rehearse it, and then choreograph a stage, production, visuals. So like, oh, by the way, can you also like promote your music and market it and be really good at the business side of it? And it seems like an insurmountable like amount of stuff to ask of an artist, but honestly, like, and I was talking with one of our local bands here in Seattle who just kind of like launched, and they really have the marketing and the business side of their band buttoned up at a very early stage. And I mean, I don't have to hate to have to say it, but I kind of hate to have to say it, but like in this day and age, if that you're like some like 10 steps ahead, if you've got all that buttoned up in terms of like, your music business as an artist, but also your touring, and kind of like just being like ahead of the game and being communicative with your promoter or your local talent buyer who you're working with, and having your tech writer just buttoned up and knowing how to like run paid ads on your own, and being online. Like there's certain bands who are so online. Like the first time we ever worked with Dead on a Sunday, I was like, when are they writing the music? There's no way that they're on TikTok this much and can actually write the music. It's like, it's insane. But like, I mean, not to say that you have to be like on TikTok and like Insta Reels and all that at that level, but like, but just holy smokes, like I'm like, do I even need to like promote this? Because you're doing such a phenomenal job. And at the end of the day, I hate to have to say it, as much as we'd love for y'all to come see me and Yasha's beautiful faces, it's not about coming to see us. It's about coming to see, the bands. And so if the bands are online and doing some sort of, running a paid ad, or just doing a little bit of a grassroots Insta Reels here and there and all that, we'll have fans who won't even know because they're like, maybe they're not following us. Maybe you're a new goth kid in Seattle, like you just moved here. You don't know how to Google Yes Music Production shows. Like you're going to Google, let's say Alice, right? Alice, Seattle. When are they coming here? And if let's say, bad example, you guys are lovely. Let me I'm going to use one of my a show we have coming up. Kevin, you're going to hate me for this. We have Nouveau Arcade coming through, and I can say this because I love him. Like I'm using that as like an example. Let's say Nouveau Arcade didn't do any promotion on the thing, which they don't. They actually do a phenomenal job, but people are following them only. Like I like synthwave, gothic industrial synthwave shows in Seattle. If I Google that and I find nothing about Nouveau Arcade, then they won't go to that show because they don't know enough to Google Yes Music Productions, because who would? You just moved here. You're a
Mhm.
goth kid who wants to just Google goth shows or whatever. And so if that band's doing a terrible job, then like you're missing like a percentage of the fans. So by you as a band doing that, like that takes just such a weight. And you know, each individual in a band, like let's say five of you who have like you know thousands of followers each, that's just the multiple, like you know the fact of multiplication there in terms of like how you could draw a crowd into like a live show. And in my business is the live show and all that. So right there, like that business side and the marketing side, if bands could just, you know, if they put like that little bit of effort into it. We've had a few, I'm not gonna, you know, drop it, but we've had shows where the band, you know, barely said anything online. And I'm like, well, geesh, like, you know, they're not here to, like I said, they're not here to see us, they're here to see you. And if you don't say anything online, I mean, there's only so much I can do. And I always joke, I'm like, you don't want me to get on stage and sing. Like that's the last thing. So, but yeah, as an up and coming, or even like just a, you know, and eventually get to a point where you have a, you know, publicist, you have PR, you have management who help with all that kind of stuff. But, you know, a lot of independent artists who are coming up can't afford that yet. And so it's very much the DIY grassroots effort on behalf of the artist. So I wish it was a situation where you're good, you can just go sing and people, they'll arrive. But, you know, this is the digital age and people need to be told. You know,
Hmm.
so yeah, I would say
Yeah.
that's probably the biggest thing, honestly. And that buttoned up tech writer, oh my goodness, don't draw it on a napkin, kids, please don't. Because I don't do tech, right? So I'm like, I'm hoping that front of house knows this. Like if I give them the napkin, you know, you know, like if they're good, they're like, yeah, we're fine. Like, but you know, I've gotten some, Tosh, that I've actually showed up and coming bands. I was like, here's a really good example of a great tech writer, you know, and they're
Hmm.
like, oh wow, I'm like, yeah. So like that too, right there is just having your tech buttoned up. Yeah,
Yeah, that's actually something that I think people that haven't toured, extensively might not even know about that. So,
right. Yeah, like you know, what are you bringing on tour with you? What is feasible, right? Like your stripped down presence. Here's our tour version. And sometimes that means a whole other body doesn't go with
mhm.
you. Like, you know, like we're a two-piece, we're on tour. And then, you know, communicating with your promoter, not the day before, but like what you might need on backline. Because I do not love scrambling the night before trying to find
No.
some backline because we can rent it, but guess what? That becomes a show expense that gets deducted from like all the things before the artist gets paid, and nobody wants to have to deduct and one more thing from the artist's pay. And so if
Mhm.
that's communicated well in advance, we beg, borrow, and steal. I'm Italian, all right? We will beg, borrow, and steal. I will spend more time trying to find like that buddy who's got that keyboard stand or whatever, or that drum rig that we can get kind of like at a friends and family rate. And you know, don't rely on your venue having like even if it says that they've got a drum kit. Well, you know, the kick's busted, and you know, like oh, if you've got a cabinet, well, the head's busted. You know, like for your you know your bass rig or whatever kind of thing. So yeah, communicating well in advance. Like it's
Yes.
the premeditated thing on the tech. So yeah, we could probably talk all day about that. And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not even like this is not even my forte, but like I've learned that what is it? Failing to plan is planning to fail.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's I love working with people that are organized and that do plan ahead because I feel like it's so much less stress that way. Because
Yes.
hopefully you guys all get to enjoy yourselves, right, while you're doing this.
I
So,
know. Oh my, there's been shows where like you know, we book these bands because we love them, and I remember there's been like a few like you know, and I love all the bands in the lineup. Let's say like that one headliner who were like, oh my gosh, and like one of the talent buyers wanted to do settlement during like the headliner's set, and I was like, can we wait? I was like, this is my favorite song of theirs. Can we just wait? You know, and he's like, okay, yeah. But yeah, like at a certain point, just being able to take a moment and like hopefully like all that preparation now, like so I can like just let this thing run and I can stand back. But also I'm like, well, I gotta go get some videos, I gotta go get some photos and you know that too. But like still watching though and enjoying the show too as I
yeah,
can. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Mhm.
I wanted to take just a moment. Thank y'all so much for tuning in and hanging out with us. You're getting some love from I hope I'm saying this right. Stylock or Steelock 1989. That's thanking you for your service as well as Amia.
Aw,
Yeah,
thank you.
and yeah, yeah. Thank y'all so much. Yeah. I am sure that, with your experience, it's like it's probably really served you in terms of really, being able to line
Yeah.
things up, being able to just like deal with like chaos as it happens, right?
Yes. Like logistics, operations, organization, like spreadsheets and trackers and just and being able to like think on your feet and not freak out. Like how can we, okay, this is a crisis situation, how can we de-escalate what's happening? Like I think the first crisis we ever had, which is at the end of the day not the worst crisis, but we had a smoke alarm go off, I'm sorry, a fire alarm go off. We had vision video in town, and
Mm.
fog, like now we're learning, right? We're always learning. I don't know all the things, but fog triggered the smoke alarm. And at the beginning, opening act for their show, and you're like, no. And not only was it like
Oh.
the awful, like the worst trance song you've ever listened to, the one that kind of sounds like your alarm clock in 1992, like High School Memories or whatever. So we had, like that was happening, and like, like are we going to lose the crowd? And even when that stopped, the strobe was still going. The fire department had to come in and shut that off because that tripped the whole PA.
Oh
So the
no.
show had to stop. And so, like Yasha's like, hey, this is a good time to go buy merch. Like, let's get the people over, like it's get the people there. And then like some kids are like techno dancing out to like the strobe. Like it was just like, let's de-escalate this thing. Not let's not lose our cool. One thing I did learn coming up in the Marine Corps was like true leaders can like walk smoothly through the rain. And so always just trying to like think about that, like in every aspect of life. If stuff is hitting the fan, like all right, how can we think on our feet and mitigate a problem here, and the show must go on, right? And we've had shows where like the oh my gosh, like the headliner caught in massive traffic, and we had to do like a reverse sound check. And then we had like oh my gosh, that was a nightmare. That one, reverse sound check, and we switched the venue. It was like another room within the same place, and this was like one of our early shows, so I was mortified, but just like, well, you know what? Let's just be hospitable to these people when they arrive. We're gonna have to and I'm doing online updates to the schedule so people know that your band that you like isn't, but just making sure that like everybody has all the information and that people don't show up and they missed whatever, and just trying to like the best we can. And I think at the end of the day, if we just give all of ourselves the grace and patience to realize that we're all just doing the best we can to make it all happen. And when I say nowadays, like when something's happening at a show, I'm like you might hear some pitchy feedback during a set or something like that, right? And people are like, oh, and like that sound wasn't good. I'm like, we have live music. Remember like 5 years ago? Now this is what I say nowadays.
Yeah.
Whenever something's going awry during a show, I'm like, this is live music. Like we are like let's just like take a moment to like, I'd rather have a live experience where like there's some like weird sound stuff going on versus being put back on my couch watching this as a live stream with a mask
Yeah.
on. Okay. So like I'd
Yeah.
rather like have like a little bit of snafu during a live show. I just like look at the bright side in that aspect. So yeah, all of you remember that.
Oh
Like we could be
yes.
back on our
Oh
couches
yes.
watching this.
Yes,
Instead,
we
yeah, we're in a room. It's a little foggy. I know that sucks. Too much haze. A long line for the bar. Oh, that sucks. But I'd rather that any day. The live
Oh, for
experience than
sure.
yeah,
For
yeah.
sure. I remember our first tour out, like, and it was just like, oh, like never will take this for granted. Like never ever take this for granted.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes. That's like we
absolutely.
were all like that next year. We were like, we're gonna go to all the shows. Because what if they just don't happen? And then we're like, well,
Yes.
maybe they will happen again. And so we kind of like we're like, okay, they'll probably happen next year. Or like and so we didn't go to, like all the shows, but oh my gosh, yeah, my wallet took some abuse. And whatever
Yeah.
year, like the full first year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was like, who needs
Um,
like a savings account,
I know. Because music.
right?
So, we're getting an awesome question from Micah, who's asking, what strengths do you have that you believe make for a great musician? That's the first question. And the second question is, what is the funniest or weirdest question that you've ever been asked in an interview? So, first question, what strengths do you believe makes for a great musician?
Oh, I feel like I'm at a job interview. I'm getting
That's
like some flashbacks. I'm like, this
that's
is one of those trick questions. Like, oh, my weakness is my strength. Okay, so what's a strength in a good musician?
Mhm.
Well, I mean, is that what they're asking? Like, what's a strength that I would like? What would make a good musician? What's a strength that would make a good musician? You're not talking just like talent, right? You're talking like holistically speaking, like this is the thing that's really going to set you above from the rest, kind of thing. And I think, well, it depends on what that musician's doing. Like a record label is going to say something different than a talent agency versus like a promoter or even a talent buyer. Um, but I think it's, oof, being genuine and transparent. Oh gosh, that's more than one thing. Um, huh. I think I would bring it down to just being very personable. We've worked with, because I think with anything, it's kind of like a job interview, right? Like, well, yeah, you have the skills and yeah, you're a good musician, blah blah blah. But geez, if we work with you and you're not very personable or you're not easy to work with, that's gonna make it tough for us to want to work with you again, And I've got high patience for like working with multiple different personalities, but coming in with just the grace and the patience as an artist to realize that we are in a live music setting, and just to come in with confidence and poise, but just being genuine and personable too, because we're all humans, right? And sometimes I always revere like these bands we work with are like some of my favorites. I'm always like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe you're on stage in front of me and I'm getting to work with you. But also like we're all people too, so as long as you are just very humble and genuine, it just makes the whole experience easier for everybody. And then the fans feel like they can approach you. Like we've had some fans, and I will never drop any names, but and I'm like, well, did that really happen? Like we've had fans who said like, oh, I felt like I couldn't approach so and so at the for the autograph or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's terrible, like and I
Mhm.
hope that and someday if we ever work with like the biggest artists of all time, but I think everybody's the biggest artist of all time, but like just being very humble and genuine, and putting like everybody's super talented, but putting your ego aside and just being a person, but being like, very professional. Is that too many like things to ask for all in one? But just genuine and humble, and just realizing that we're all just trying to do the best we can. And if that shines through all else, even if like you're half good on stage, I'm like, you know what, but it was like a darn pleasure to work with you. And I would absolutely
Mhm.
ask you to come back again. So
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I feel like it's sort of like the lasting impression is the human element, right?
yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Because we
Yeah.
think we're gonna remember all the no, we don't. We'll remember like those
Yeah.
like kind of like really genuine characteristics of a person. So yeah. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the shows that I've seen where things have gone wrong, it was actually how the artist handled it and how they made us feel really comfortable. Like they just didn't make a big deal of it. They were just
Yes.
talking to us like, we're all hanging out, and it
Yes.
actually made me walk away from that loving them that much more.
Yes. Yes. You're human. Yes.
Yes.
hmm
So the second part of the question from Micah was, what is the funniest or weirdest question that you've been asked in an interview?
Like for my job, like my actual day job, or like
I think in general, like
in life.
in life, yes.
Huh. Well, I don't know if this would answer the question, but I was just doing I was advancing I'm starting to advance one of our shows we have coming up at the end of March. And as you do, need your tech writers, blah blah blah. And one of our local artists sent me their synth artist, which if he's watching, he might get a kick that I'm mentioning this, but like he had a little funny nuggets that he put in the end of the tech writer. And so I always think it's funny, like when bands ask for some, if they get a little silly in their tech writer, which I think you should always be silly in your I'm sorry, not your tech, but your hospitality writer. Like, have some levity in your hospitality writer. And I was like, the first time we ever worked with Street Fever. So as a result, this jogged my memory about the first time we ever worked with Street Fever, who I don't know if you're familiar, but he's just a very avant-garde style EBM industrial artist who's just like, he is a show. You have to see him live. And the first time we ever worked with him, I think it was like 2022. So we're kind of still, like learning back then. And his hospitality writer, I was like, when we first started getting hospitality writers, an artist would ask us, I was like, Yasha, we got to find like this very obscure kind of Pellegrino. And now we've learned that like, do you really need that? Or will like these, the fizzy stuff from the venue work? But we would just be like, so bands were asking, so I'm like saying this is like a funny thing, like bands are asking us of this stuff. And his hospitality writer, oh my gosh, it was like and I actually just texted it to this band the other day. I was like, you have to see this. It's gonna give you a laugh. But at first it was like they were asking for Red Bulls and uh, soda water as you do. And then all of a sudden it was like a Bible, New or Old Testament will suffice. They wanted a hard copy of the Kybalion. Um, they wanted a crucifix. And so as I was like, as still as an up and coming promoter, as I was like reading this, I was like, oh my God, do we have to get this stuff? And I was like, kind of like, no, right? But I was like, do we? And so I was just like, and like Yash was like, I don't know. And so I literally went online and was like, help Seattle.
Oh no.
if this is like we really need to source this stuff or not. And like people like it takes a village, but people chimed in and they're like, I got that, like I hate to throw like I thought that was like, and I love street food, but I was like, I love that. Like have levity and like be funny and ask weird stuff in your and that'll like then you'll know if your promoter is looking at the damn hospitality writer.
That's true. That's true.
Mhm. So yeah. That was, I'd
We
say
have
that was probably, I
another.
don't know if it was meant to be funny, but it was definitely like, it was one thing that sticks out in my mind. It's kind of like I guess one of the funniest things that's ever happened or been asked of us.
Well, I feel like that's okay. So that's kind of a challenge then for people that work with you in the future is what are some strange things that we can ask for in a writer?
Like, wait a minute. But I
So
mean, I
getting
think
it.
it's a great
Oh,
way to
sorry, guys.
keep some levity, through this whole opera, and but also making sure the artist's taken care of, but like just, and also be like, hey, this is a great segue for like make sure your hospitality writers are buttoned up. Oh my gosh, I don't know how many times bands have asked for like the phone book in terms of booze, and I'm like, oh yeah, we've been sober for like 5 years now, and I'm like, okay, good thing we didn't buy you that
Yeah.
bottle.
Yes.
But yeah, it's I think it's a great way to keep some levity in the whole experience, for sure.
So Annalise is asking, what inspires you?
I would say just seeing consistently seeing like new hungry artists. Like I'm gonna throw Tyler Knoxwin under the bus right now, but like in a good way. Getting to know Tyler is a EBM darkwave industrial artist out of Seattle, who previously was an artist and then like kind of like was looking for new representation, and so I was taking a step back to like reconfigure their business side and music of it all. And then I met him around that time and didn't know he was an artist, and so he like told me one day and I was like, what? And it's like really good music, and so we've now worked with him several times and we'll be working with him again when Harsh Symmetry comes to town. But just like when I listened to his music, I was just like, oh my God, this is good. Like, this is good. Like, I need to get you on stage immediately. So that right there, like Nouveau Arcade, who we're going to have March 21st in Seattle. This is, I'm like, again, Kevin, like, I feel like I'm throwing him under the bus, but like, it's like when raised Italian, we spank you because we love you. Like, I talk about you because I love you, because I think your music is really good. Like, when they first launched their music, I was like, oh my gosh, this is good. And if I can ever get like these guys on a stage, which we are now, like March 21st, and like they are precisionists. They perfected their, oh my gosh, the music is good, the delivery is going to be phenomenal, they put a meticulous attention to every detail. It's going to be a phenomenal production. But like, so it took a while for them to be ready for live, right? And so to finally, like, I'm like, so when I hear that new band come out with some new music, and if it's feasible for me to be able to work with them, I'm like, oof. Like the first time we worked with a band called Missing Words out of like the LA area, like rich, kind of like a synth pop sound. I found like one of their songs and I just like fell in love with it, and like reached out to them kind of like cold call on Insta and was like, oh my gosh, I love the song. Have you guys ever toured? Like if you guys are ever in like Seattle, like hit me up, because like please. And they're like, okay, let's do it. And so they did, and they booked a date with us and then made the rest of the tour based off of that Seattle date. Because I like reached out and was like, holy crap, your music is amazing. So I just like when I hear like really great music, I'm just like, oh, I would love to work with these people and get them on a stage and be able to say like, and see those fans like react to that music the way that I reacted to that music. And so I think it's just, that's what kind of like keeps me going. And I think that's what's allowed for us to just kind of really start to create our little niche of what we're producing, it's because it's bands that we really, really like. And it's the music we really, really like. And when we first started, I was like, we're going to book all the bands. I like metal. Let's do that too. But I realized, like, while I do like metal, I do like techno, and I do like, indie pop, like this is the music that's in my core. And I really am passionate about this music. So like, let's focus on that and let's get that on a stage, and let's continue to like investigate and seek out new music. So I think that's always going to be like the driving factor.
Absolutely. And I think it's powerful when you do just focus and when you're like, okay, let's just
Yes.
focus on this particular thing,
Yeah.
right?
And it was Ali, honestly, because he really mentored us coming up when we were doing this whole thing, and like the ins and outs, like a lot of like our success, I would give him credit for, because he was showing us how, like, all right, when a band comes in, you have to make sure that they're taking care of the green room, blah, 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 and all those kind of like rules of the road with the full operation of a show. But I wanted to sort of book all the kinds of music that I like, because I do like all kinds of music, but it's tough to know like every genre, every all the locals in those genres. Like you want to know all your good locals. And so if I were to have to know all of the indie pop bands, all of the singer songwriters, all the local up and coming metal acts, all the pop punk bands, like on top of knowing all the gothic industrial, to be able to funnel the appropriate support acts for a tour, like, and have a day job. So I was like, okay, let's reel it back. Let's focus on one thing we're really good at, instead of being like, jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. Let's focus on the one thing we're really good at. So to where people are like, oh, those girls do that stuff really well. So if we go to their show, regardless of whether we know the band or not, we know it's going to be a great lineup, because we know it's like, we can throw on our fishnets, our neon rave wear, and it's going to be like the same expected thing every time. It's going to be a quality act, because they know that that's their craft. They know that. So
So
but
actually
you'll
that
still
leads
find me. I'm gonna go see a metal show on Monday though, so don't and a synth pop show on
Oh,
Monday. So you'll see. So when I'm not doing, that's where you're gonna find me, like just bopping my head, like.
yes.
And we've even had where like I've been at like, oh, I just saw a really good artist recently, and people like they thought it was our show. And I was like, well, just because I'm there doesn't mean it's mine. But you will see me on occasion run interference. I'm like, I got to go talk to the front of house. This doesn't sound good. Like, I'm like, all right, sorry if I'm overstepping, but like, what do you think about doing this? I know. I'll get back to my drink. But
I
I
love
do
it.
I do it very tactfully though.
Well, Audra actually asked what you think about what makes a powerful lineup.
Ooh, that's like the golden question, right? Like, what is gonna draw the people, sell all the tickets? And I used to try to do the thing where I was like, every band has to be sound the same. Or like if it's like the headliner's a goth rock band, like, well, the opener needs to be goth rock, and the direct support bands needs to be goth rock. But I found that we all kind of like teeter like within that realm of, like, we're talking about gothic industrial music, right? Like within that realm, we've got, we like some of the post punk, and we like some of the more emo stuff, and then but we also sometimes want to rage to some of the more like aggro industrial stuff. So it's okay to have lateral limits of like what we can plug into a lineup, but I still always try to make sure that it makes sense, and that people will get there early on for the opening act. So
Mm,
sometimes it means trying to have to be strategic. Like if I have a lesser known headliner, like maybe I need to bring in like a local heavyweight who draws their like 100 friends and family to the show. So it's really can be, it's kind of like all over the map sometimes. And just because I really like a band and I will go to that show doesn't mean like 200 other people will.
hmm
And there's been times where it was, like a kind of lower turnout, and I still stood up there right in the front. But it's tricky. I think it's a combination of all the things. It's like it's especially in Seattle. Is it raining? Is it Tuesday? Is it too late? Is it too early? Is it on the same day as Skinny Puppy? Is it just Sunday? There's like this like perfect storm for like the right show. And it's at a certain point you do the best you can to think that like this is the best day, the best time, the best lineup that we can put together in this circumstance, to where hopefully people recognize the effort that was put in. Um, and but also giving like some of those up and coming artists a chance too. So, I think that there's a testament to that too. Like you don't always get that same person to open every show. Like there's new artists coming up, and I hope that fans recognize that that is a strength, that we're pulling in some of these newer artists to be opening acts, because this is how the life cycle of an artist should work. You shouldn't always open, you shouldn't always be direct support. I'm going to move you now into the direct support slot next time we work with you. And then the next time I'm going to move you into the headliner spot so I can bring a new up and coming. So I think that's a strong suit right there. And hopefully the fans and the bands recognize that, where I don't want to repeat the same show. And I think that should be a strength too, is kind of like changing up that lineup every time. So you're not seeing the same show. Like, oh, there's that band with that opener. Every time we come to Seattle, it's at that same place and the same 100 people. So I think, and hopefully people recognize that as like a strength in terms of like curating these lineups. So that's a little insider tip.
That's actually, I mean, I feel like that really holds a lot of wisdom in terms of also the future visioning and like really thinking about big picture,
Mhm.
and also being in service to the bands, like really like how can we actually help them grow, right?
Yes, I recently did that with an artist that came through town, and I was like, I've seen you a bunch of times, and every time, phenomenal artists, they draw a crowd. It's like, maybe like the same 150 people. And I was like, next time you come through town, you should really be checking out XYZ venues that bring in like these really big acts that draw 500 plus, let's say, and maybe try to get yourself on an opening slot for that. And I was like, I don't expect some payment for this, but I'm like, I'm just going to throw a name out there and I'll let them know, like I'll let that talent buyer at that venue know. And one of the venues we book out quite a bit in town, they're like, Elizabeth, are you their agent? I was like, no, but I just want to like, like do that thing where I'm just like making sure that like, because if like a big tour is coming through that draws that 500 plus, if they can come up from LA, this band, then that could be a good thing for them to grow to, instead of playing that same 100 people, they now can be on a stage in front of 300 plus people. So that's, that was just me kind of trying to like add a little, value as I could based on what I've seen in the life. And that's just going to help us, right? Because if we book that band again, now they've been on a stage in front of 300 people, and they will start to draw, because the other band, they were direct support. But it's right, you got to put aside the ego, be willing to not be that headliner the next time, and like be a direct support or even be an opener, you know. But that's just,
Yeah.
you headline this room, but you open for Skinny Puppy, That's
Oh yeah.
what was your Skinny Puppy? I don't know why we're using Skinny Puppy. Should we health maybe, or like or like Cross, oh gosh, Crosses, well, they were one of the great bands I saw, yeah, these bands that are like selling out big theaters and stuff like that. So yeah.
Well, how does like a smaller band that's starting out, like how would they get onto a bill with a larger band?
Well, now are you talking like the big, like, like the 1,000 plus venues, would you say? Or are you just talking like, like an up and coming band that wants to play? I'll use one of our local venues, El Corazon, for example, that
Hmm.
they've got two rooms, one that holds like 200 and the other one holds about 800. Although I don't believe Dana Sims, who owns that venue, he tells me 800 every time. And I ask him every time, and I'm like, really? Like, it just doesn't seem like him. He says, I'm like, okay. But yeah, like in terms of like those sorts of venues, which we call our independent venues, our independently owned venues across the major cities, the rooms that hold like 100 to like conservatively about like 500 or so, like that's just a matter of getting out there and getting yourself known, because there are a lot of bands that they're working on the music, but they haven't made it known that they're out there. We've got an artist, I'm going to give them a little boost, Hot Hail out of Seattle. um, they're just out there. They are online putting their music out there, and they're new. They're a legacy performer who has industry experience, but they have just launched a new persona, a new music project. They're getting on where they can opening slots. Recently, a band dropped at the last minute. I reached out to them. I said, hey, and it was not even our show. It was for another. I just saw there was a need. They were available within hours to go. So it's
Mm.
just being available, um, to where if a talent buyer is like, and you see this a lot where like openers will drop or somebody drops from a lineup, and you need to just, whoever's local, can you be available within 5 hours to get down for load in with your whole rig of everything. And just so having that flexibility, and you kind of need to be when you're an up and coming artist, I would say you could be like, no, unless, like we all have day jobs, right? If it's going to really, you're like, oh, it's going to impede upon the day job, stuff like that. But just being available, getting your stuff out there where you're known to the local talent buyers, the local promoters. I'm going to do a quick plug for, if you're in the Northwest, there's something called the Northwest Artist Database. This is like, Vancouver, BC, Idaho, Washington, Oregon region. Ian Cheshire, who used to run Take Warning Presents, he took a step down from being an independent promoter, but now is exclusively a talent buyer for a few venues in the region. He started this amazing thing called the Northwest Artist Database, and it's just a place for artists to just register their bands, name the band, the genre, how do we find you on Bandcamp, where's your social media, and to where talent buyers, bookers, promoters can go and find and source artists. And so just getting yourself out there. Back in the day when I first started doing this, I spent like one Friday night, like during the pandemic, just going down the rabbit hole on Bandcamp. Just like created a search, Seattle, goth bands, blah, 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 whatever, and found all these bands who I've never heard of. They don't
Mm-hmm.
really promote. Their last known
Mm-hmm.
thing on social media was like years ago, but they're actually still active. And then some of the bands I found were no longer together. And it was so just like being, you got to put yourself out there. Even if you only have one song,
Yeah.
like one song on
Yeah.
Spotify, just get yourself out there. So that way people know who you are and they can find you.
So
That's what I
true.
would say.
Like when I'm putting together shows in cities that we haven't played and I'm looking for other bands to play with, I've had that issue where I go to Bandcamp and I do a search and finding the bands that are active and playing live too, that's a whole nother thing. So
Yes.
yes,
And you find
yes.
those gems and you go to like their Instagram or their Facebook and you see like the last activity was like in 2019 and you're like, eh.
Yep. Yeah. And
So, but
then
yeah, that's what I would say. And then,
yeah.
but then like, also like, like, and so I actually will feed. So some of these bigger shows in Seattle that are getting booked at like, uh, the showbox venues, which hold over 1,000. We've got a good friend in town who he does talent buying with AEG, and he's hit me up a few times wondering about a local, and I'm like, these guys are those guys. And when he's feeding those locals to a really big tour coming through who have like major representation, it's usually going to be very last minute. And they have to make it's going to be to the discretion of the tour. And at that level, you really need to have your stuff buttoned up as a local. So I would imagine they're going to see like some legacy performance, that you've actually been doing some shows, that you're putting out music, you have engagement on social media. So it's really aggressive. Like you really need to be getting yourself out there, and putting stuff out there, because you can have some good music on Spotify, but if you haven't performed live yet or on Bandcamp and your music's out there, like you haven't had live time yet. So I think, like get a few shows under your belt, even if it means just doing like a divey spot and whatever, like just like a locals lineup, or even just doing like a open, I don't know, like just making sure that people start to know who you are, to where they can see
Hmm.
like, okay, you've got some bona fide stage time, and you're starting to do like the things that make sense to get you on the stage like this. So
Yeah, absolutely. Like the starting part is I feel like maybe the hardest part, right? But then
yes.
yes, yes. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It's a lot of work, but I think you have to do all that, like put in the, like, what is it, the what's the word I'm looking for, but like basically put in all that work on the front end of it all, so that way it'll pay off dividends later. Because not everybody's gonna like be found on YouTube. I hate to have to say it, like,
Mhm. Yeah.
like you can like leave it up to chance, but just, and I wish we lived in an age. I always think about like back in the day, like where people just like didn't have, like before the internet, and you just put like posters on telephone poles, and like that was the one way you found out about bands. You're like, well, it's going to be at that pole, whatever's on that pole, I'm going to go to that show, because what else, and like especially in Seattle, right? Like I'm not from here, but I would imagine they're like Lane Staley for $5 at the off ramp or whatever it was back in like those, like the grunge years of Seattle or something. And you're like, I guess I'm going to that because that's the thing to do tonight. Like, but
Hmm.
it wasn't like you had to like figure out on which platform, but now you got to do it because
Hmm.
where are all your people that you want to find. And somebody did say recently, it's we're kind of getting back to the analog. We need to go back to flyering with like this mass exodus from Meta, but we'll see. TBD on that.
So, what would be a way like that you like getting approached for a band that's approaching you for the first time?
I would say if you go to any of our and this is, well, I guess, so if you're not in social media, it's kind of tough, but like when people go to our social media, you'll see where it says like for booking to email us. And I really would love if it could all be funneled through our email, because I got the email very organized. I can, but I've got right now where, folks will message me on both our professional Yes Insta, but like also my like private one. And so then it's like, and I've talked with Yvette Velasquez, who's a talent buyer at the Coffin Club, and she's like, I will not respond because it's like it's basically it's like you know, where is that message? I know they messaged me
Hmm.
somewhere. Where is it? And I was
Yep.
just thinking about this as I was like, you emailed me and I messaged you on Insta, and I was like, I messed up, but like trying to like get it funneled all through like email, so to keep it all right there, buttoned up. I'm guilty as charged. I will sometimes ping a band on Insta because sometimes people don't check email every day, but we are all like on social
Hmm.
media usually almost every day. So if you see a message come in on your, you know, Instagram or whatever, you might respond to it quicker. But usually what I'll do is like, hey, cool, let's do a show. Could you follow up on our email here? Or what is your email? I will follow up with you on email to get this all buttoned up. So we have it somewhere because messages, you know, obviously everybody knows can get lost, buried. Um, in the you know Instagram and Facebook and all that kind of thing. But I would say, and usually when if I'm out and I'm talking to somebody, I give them a card and you scan it, it brings you right to our you know link tree that has our you know our email and stuff like that, so they can find us that way, which I prefer. And if bands do reach out to just it's you know it's kind of like inquiring about a job where you want to send your EPK and all the things and you know your target dates if you are trying to tour through. You're like, hey, let's do a show. Okay, cool. You know, can you send over your, you know, your press kit and your music links and when you're trying to tour through and like, so that way we can just start to really hone in on something and get that lined up and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, most people I talk to tell me that they prefer emails. On occasion, people will say, "Oh, I prefer Instagram," but most people say something similar, like they prefer the email, you
Yeah.
know.
You can really keep an email like categorized and organized. And I've got like folders for every like for conversations and for shows. And that way it's like you can see those new emails when they come in, you can flag them and all that. So it's just, yeah, that way, like, you know, because I definitely don't want to miss any messages, you know, especially like
Hmm.
in the world of social media where like a lot of messages might go to like your other inbox or whatever, you know, that can
Yeah.
happen. You're like, oh my gosh, like there was one we got, I didn't realize it got funneled into the like the other inbox. I was like, oh my gosh, like you know, so yeah,
Yeah, I think as well, like like you were mentioning, like when you get a message, like having your links, your EPK, like that sort of thing, right?
absolutely, yeah. Just
Yeah.
having I worked with and they had a beautiful EPK, but band Nemoria. And you know, love them. Oh my gosh, Angel and Gustav. They're from Sweden and they now live in Portland, Oregon. And I'm a graphic designer by trade, and so I always got like that, like 2 cents I have to throw in addition to like it should have this content, but it should also look like this. And so I just gave them like some constructive feedback just to like because I wanted them to have like the best like aesthetically like looking too, like press kit, right? Like, you know, readable and stuff like that. And so just because like I they think their music is amazing and I care about them, but like but having like a really buttoned up because that's like you're telling a talent buyer, a promoter, a booker, like that's your like their first impression of you. And that shows that you're have a professional, even if you're like brand new and got like 2 songs, you have everything buttoned up. And it could show you've had 5 shows and like the statistics from that. We've opened up for this. We had a opening slot at that festival, but whatever, at least it's like there. And because if not, you're basically what you're doing is you're giving the talent buyer, the booker, the promoter homework.
Hmm.
Like, cool, I guess I will go and look you
Right.
up. And maybe I have time, but a lot of these talent buyers do not have time. They've got a million requests coming in for shows, and they're not going to take. And I hate to have to say it, it's just the way it is. To go and research you and your band, and of course, like other bands they know that are coming through, like the Birthday Massacre is coming to Seattle. Like we know who they are, right? Like you know, you're a brand new band. Like you better have it all. Like it's like applying for a job. Like here is me in a snapshot in a pretty little package.
Hmm.
You know, all the links are here, you know, with it maybe stylized that like Atlas, for example, very stylized look of the band. Like, you know, you'd expect like that EPK, right? It's gonna have like it's gonna have that vibe. It's gonna be like that's your persona, you know. And so like I love when you see like a band has a little bit of stylized like they're like EPK is a little stylized, it has, you know, or even if it has like some, oh my gosh, like some press blurbs, you know, like some you know, which usually at that point now you have like a PR person who's doing that, but like just that kind of stuff. It's like a little, like a holistic snapshot of the artist. It's very helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
It's something that like I think if you're just starting out, you might not even realize like how like you were saying, like minimizing the work for the person that you're sending it to, so they don't have to
Yes.
do like minimizing it so that they can actually just look at it and be like, oh, okay, you know?
Yep. It's like think of it like a job application, honestly, like where like the recruiters or the, HR is going through all of those and they're just weeding through them, right? We all know this how this works. They're just like, all right, what makes it through the first sorting kind of thing. Like, any think of like any major concert venue that's getting like inquiries from bands, like they're just getting tons, and even like independent promoters, like, we get several requests. So just to make sure that it's just all there. So you're not giving more work, giving them
Yeah.
more work. It's like, oh, this is like a first impression and what it's going to be like to work with you if we do, like if we do bring you to town on a concert. So yeah.
So Sean is asking, what do you have a dream band that you would love to book and work with?
Mm. Oh, I don't know. I feel like I shouldn't say that because then it's like, oh, them. Why not us?
If you're willing to share, and that's okay if you don't.
Well, well, it can never happen because Peter Steele passed away.
Oh.
Typo Negative is like my favorite band of all time. Um, I guess yes. If he was still here, that would be it. We got kind of close to that. We booked 2 years ago now. Seraphim Shock, who
Mm,
very much have the that kind of gothic metal, and we booked them in October too. It was just like it was the
mm,
perfect show. It was, and they brought their own like props for stage, which came straight from like a Halloween superstore. But they very much have that sound, and Seraphim actually did shows with Typo Negative back in the day, so that was kind of like the degrees of separation kind of like really got right there. But I think that one was kind of like a dream for me. Like when I actually was able to get in touch with Charles from the band, and who's like just a lovely human being, and like get them on a stage. And maybe they don't sell out arenas, but like in my world, that was just like holy smokes, and they were just lovely to work with. And it was just that, yeah, that was, and he loves dogs. I mean, anybody who like loves dogs we bring through town. I'm just any animal lover. I'm just like that's just like another, you know. But yeah, I would say that was probably, geez, I don't know. It's tough. Can I get back to you on that one?
yes, yes.
I feel like I might have to like think about that because I love so many bands right now. We've had honestly so many bands where I was like, oh my god, this is the band. Like I can retire now. We booked this band. Like
Uh,
we booked Ollie. We booked Ollie Ride a few years ago. Who he's booking direct now. He's going to be in Seattle actually on Monday. We're going to go see him. But when we booked Ollie Ride, who, if you're not familiar, he's this synth pop legend out of London. He's younger, so he's not like a legend, but he's the vocalist for FM84, which is a huge retro
mm,
synthwave band. And when we actually worked with him, I was like, oh my gosh, that was kind of like, okay, we're getting into like this next level of artists where we're no longer just doing like local shows anymore. Um, and he's just like this powerhouse on stage. And so we actually, when we had him through town, we did a whole um, at a friend's place. We did a little artist soiree with them and the touring band Parallels that was with them, and it was kind of really cool to like holy crap, we're like mingling with artists and having like drinks and like throwing a party for them before their concert tonight. So it was like that was like another one. It was kind of like holy smokes, I had to pinch myself that we were doing that. But yeah, there might be one. I think Typo Negative would be that though, but that will just obviously never happen, unfortunately.
CJ was actually asking what you consider to be the Mount Rushmore of metal and industrial. So they're not industrial, but I mean, it's like they're metal. So I was like, Typo Negative might be fall kind of into that.
Yeah, I would say that yeah, they were like my OG, who like that was just like who I listened to forever as a kid. And um, yeah, back in those days, I really got into Life of Agony around that time, because I was like a angsty teenager, like growing up in New York, as we all were, and like so I feel like to see Life of Agony on stage, which they almost came through with Keith Caputo as Mina Caputo, which I've recently read that Mina is going to transition back to Keith Caputo apparently, but they were
Hmm.
just like like I just like listen to them over and over and over again. And so I think they would be another one. They were meant to come through Seattle several years ago, but I believe I can't remember why that tour, like several dates of the tour were canceled or something like that. So that was one I was like really looking forward to. And I would, I wouldn't even care like if like I don't need to work with that band. Like I just want to go see them live, just to be like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like 16-year-old me is like screaming right now. Yeah, that was like that was back like that was like the heart that was like the New York hardcore scene back in those days where mosh pits were very dangerous. You're like, oh my gosh.
Yep.
Yeah. But I one band that I recently have, well, not recently, but have gotten into, and I wouldn't say that they're like industrial, like gothic industrial, but like I've gotten into like uh Swedish metal band Catatonia, who I've seen recently, and they're more like melodic. So that's another one I know we'll never book, but that's a band where I'll go and see. And if I see, like, if we work with a band that has that sort of influence in their music, but they're still like industrial, I'm like, okay, this is like next level for me. So yeah,
Yeah.
and Ali brings a lot of those bands through, like Angels in Agony that have come through, and he was supposed to, I don't know if he's bringing Rotersand through, but like bands like that come through, those are definitely like that have that sort of like, I don't know if you want to call it like melodic vocals that kind of pair well with like that sort of like metal or industrial sort of sound. I think that's always for me like a, yeah.
Oh yeah. I love the combinations. I love when you
Yes.
hear like the different influences and inspirations like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, question is, if somebody wants to get started in music promotion, like how would they get started?
Well, I would say, being present in your scene is a huge thing. So like I've talked with people recently who are like, I want to book shows. And I'm like, cool, yeah, absolutely. Like um uh I don't know if like the way we started by like just going out to shows and like being around shows a lot, but I feel like that's a key part of it. Like I don't think you, and especially I've observed in Seattle, is like you really need to show face in your community. And it's probably this way everywhere else, Nashville, LA, whatever, but like just being a part of your community, being a positive force in your community, showing that you're out there supporting, people know who you are. There's not all of a sudden like when we first started, people were like, what's Yes Music Productions? And we're like, as we're out there, we're just out there anyway, and people are starting to see us and they're putting a face with the name of the brand. So being out there, getting to know people in your community, starting to get to know the bands, but there's a lot of like learning to do. So if you can actually get a few, like I was go back to saying Ali of Mechanismus, who kind of mentored us through the way, teaching us like what to do and not to do. Like here's how, like we didn't know that like, a show is not just like going there and handing out flyers. And when I tell people in promoter, like I'm not like that guy on the Vegas Strip who's just giving you like, there's a lot of like logistical work that goes into producing a show where you're kind of like the glue of the whole thing. And I've actually heard this from somebody recently where you're communicating with the production managers, the talent buyer, photographers, DJs, support bands, tour managers, booking agents, and you're kind of like, if this is your show, you need to be like very well organized and being able to like all those moving pieces, be able to communicate to the sound engineer the requirements of the touring band and communicate back to the touring. Like, so there's a lot of like, it's more than meets the eye. It's not just, finding a date and letting it roll by itself. It really takes, you have to kind of like nurture it along the way, and people will rely on that promoter. And we've heard horror stories from bands where we worked with promoter and they weren't even there, and and stuff like that. And so it's really like being present. There's been few times when we were not at our own shows, like when people ask us like, oh, are you gonna be at your show? I'm like, yeah. Like the only time we've not been there has been like sickness,
Hmm.
or I've had like military duty, so I couldn't be there. But like aside from that, like it's this is our baby. We're gonna be there to make sure it all goes smoothly. So you really need to be like, you have to kind of take a look in the mirror. It's more than just like finding a date and getting a band in touch with the venue and saying all right bye, like creating a flyer. It's a lot of legwork. It's a lot of um intricacies of social media marketing and getting to know your local talent buyers, like to where they know who the heck you are, because you go knocking on their door right away and they're like, who the heck are you? Like you're gonna bring us you on a Friday night. We've never heard of this band, we've never heard of you. That's a primo night. Why should I give you that night? Because how do I know what it's going to do? And we've definitely had talent buyers like, well, what's the legacy of that band in Seattle? What was their ticket sales last time? Because I'm not going to give them a prime night, you know. So just building rapport with your local talent buyers. So it's something that doesn't happen overnight. Unless people already know you and you're coming from like another part of the industry, like, oh yeah, so and so who used to run that now is doing the talent buying there or is the promoter here or whatever. Like, okay, we know that guy or gal. But like if you're just a no name who wants to throw together shows, it takes time to get to know everybody. And then they start to build, it's like the earn trust. Okay,
Hmm.
we've seen you out, we've started to get to know you. And now we've got certain venues in town. I request a date that day or the next day. I get the answer back. Yeah, you've got you this date or whatever. But in the beginning, it was like crickets and tumbleweeds, just hearing back from venues. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say maybe just getting in cahoots with your like another promoter in town. And I certainly, if I see somebody who's earnest, and I'm not like the biggest hot shot in town, but if I see somebody who's earnest, who really wants to do some things, I absolutely will speak on that person's behalf to a talent buyer. Like, hey, you know, there's a new promoter in town who wants to book this band. I've gotten to know them. They're doing a really good thing. FYI, I'll make that connection and then pass them along. So just to like
Yeah.
help that, you know. So, but I think it's about who you know and like and starting to get out there and put your face out there and get to know everybody. You got to do it. You can't be an introvert. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that actually holds true as well for artists, like just, being present in your own live music community, like going and
Hmm.
supporting people, and not just for the sake of supporting it. I mean, the way you are speaking to the shows that you've been to, it's like you actually love the music.
Hmm.
So, like finding the things that speak to you and finding the music that speaks to you, I think is key.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I love when I see like other artists who are at like another show and they're just there having like a great time and like dancing and I'm like, yeah, that's what it's all about, you know, like supporting each other. And like sometimes there'll be like a show that's like a low turnout, but like I'll look at it's like, you know, half the people there are like other bands, like other local bands. And I'm like, yeah, you know, like this is awesome. Or like a show that's like on a holiday randomly, you're like, oh, like, you know, like like let's go support this person, you know, and like we're all just like, well, I didn't have anything going on. Okay, cool, me neither. Like, let's go like support this person. Or like at least we'll stop here before we go to family dinner or whatever it is, you know, like so yeah, yeah, just I think yeah, that sometimes can be the tough part too, is like being out and being present because that costs money in this day and age.
Yes.
So just kind of
Yes.
like here's what I can afford to do within my means to get out there and get my face known out there in the community and build a good rapport and that I'm present and I support, you know, things and stuff. But yeah, yeah, it takes time.
Hmm.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't happen overnight, I would say. And that was the case for us. But if the work gets put in, then and it shows, then I think like something can happen, definitely for sure.
Well, you mentioned that you guys started in 2021, correct?
Well, it was actually like I think it was like in 2019 when we were having conversation about it. And
Mm-hmm.
then like the first, I don't even want to call it show we ever did, but it was like friends of ours, cover bands were doing like a goth night show. And we just kind of like, I don't even know if we did that show. I think it was more like, it was like, okay, you guys can like be there. Or I don't know. Everything before 2020, I'm like, it's like a bad dream. I'm like, what did we even do? Like, but then like 2020, we are going to launch the thing and pandemic happened. And instead, we did some joint, we did some joint live stream music festivals with Mechanismus to raise money for shuttered music venues in town. And at the time, we did for two venues. One was the old Highline Bar in Seattle, which is where Mechanismus used to do their shows and their first ever festival. And the other one was El Corazon. So that was kind of like when we were starting, was like collaborating with Mechanismus in 2020 for some live stream music festivals, which were amazing. They were fun. Ali brought in bands from all over the globe. You could, because we're all doing this from our living rooms. And then in 2021 was our first ever. We did one collab show with Mechanismus. I remember it was Twin Tribes and Wingtips. It was like Mechanismus and Yes Music presents, and it was like still masks unless you're drinking and sitting down and jumping on one leg and rubbing, like, you know, the whole, remember the combo, like
Oh, yes.
whatever that combo is, like that was, we're in those times at that time. And then And then we did our, like I mentioned earlier, our first ever on our own show was the Hollows live stream in, I'm sorry, Hollows album release in Seattle at a venue that no longer exists. Well, the bar still exists, but their live music space doesn't exist anymore. And that was 2021, like August, I want to say. And then, so that was like a handful of shows that year. And then in 2022, we did like 32 shows. So
Wow.
it kind of like, and then 2023, we did like 34 shows. And then we realized, like, okay, we did that little period of saturation. Like everybody knows who the heck we are. And then 2024 was when we kind of like leveled out to where, like, all right, what's really feasible? Like maybe like 2 a month, three if we need to. But
Yeah.
it's just it's a lot, you know. So but yeah, that's yeah. So I would say like 2021 was our first ever like in-person show, and then like 2022 was like our first like full-blown year of like double digit shows. So yeah.
Would you say that's the year that you were really finding your flow and like really understanding like how all the moving parts
Yes.
really worked?
Like learning like what's in advance and
Mm-hmm.
you know like how to appropriately communicate that stuff and like learning what you know bands need in terms of like writers and all that kind of stuff and when to communicate that to the venues and you know and we're still learning obviously but like just really like learning how the full operation of a show works. How soon in advance do I need to know that you want to do a show here so that way we have adequate time to promote it, to find a venue. Like we wait too late, like we don't have places anymore, and especially in the aftermath of the pandemic when everybody was touring and like every room was booked up everywhere,
Yeah.
um and stuff like that. So getting that like well in advance, getting your date locked down. Like people laugh and I'm like, oh yeah, we've got a date right now held for 2026.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the reality of international visas right now. We've got, you know, and I tell people like 6+ months is usually the going rate for like getting stuff booked. 3 maybe, but like you just want to have that adequate time. But like learning that those intricacies too, and then learning also like what we could take on and having learning to say no. Like we joke right now, we're kind of like no music productions. Well, because like because at the time it was like yes, yes, you get a show and you get a show. But like they were like, oh my god, like we can't do this because we both have day jobs and like we have to be able to do it well. And if we take on too much, then we can't really do it well. And so now we've gotten to a point where it's like, okay, you want to tour and you want to tour through around the same day, and neither one of you have like carried support with you. Could we get you both in the same room on the same day instead of you both doing your own
Mm.
shows in town? And so if you've got like some lateral limits of the date you're hitting Seattle, and lo and behold, more often than not, it kind of works out. So I've been able to like marry up some. So if you see some of our lineups coming up with 4+ bands, that's why. It's because I've gotten multiple requests and I don't want to add more shows, but I want to like I still want those bands to come through. And how can we all put down our swords? You're not going to all get the headliner guarantee, but this might be like a really cool show and our fans will attend. So I've learned that too, how I've learned a lot about our fan base. If we've got 5 shows in one month, people aren't like, well, they're all different bands. Like, no, they're just seeing that as 5 different Yes Music shows. And so they're not going to go to all of them because
Mm-hmm.
it's too much. It's overwhelming because there's other concerts coming through. There's other club nights. There's other stuff they want to do, wine tasting, haunted attractions, whatever they do, Netflix binge, and so by having like having like less frequent shows, they see it as now like, okay, this is like we're gonna go to that one show because it's that 1 or 2 Yes Music shows this month. So I've like learned those things too along the way. And so if you're a band and I'm asking you to like flex your date a little bit to like, can you do this day instead because so and so is coming through and let's marry it up onto one bill, then that's why. So it's not because I don't want you to make money, it's because I think this is going to work the best for our city, and then people will show up. We had like 5 bands one night at the Fun House in Seattle, and I was like, oh my god, like no one's going to show up, and people showed up early and they stayed for the whole thing,
I
and I
love
merged
that.
like 3 different tours.
That's amazing.
And I was like, yes. And I actually, one of the bands was Miss Misery out of Chicago, and I got a tattoo from the lead singer while he was in town because he did. It was just that was a great weekend, that one right there. But yeah, so like learning all of these, learning when your bands are touring, and if you have a tattooer in the band, get it? No, I'm kidding, but kind of serious. But yeah, like learning along the way, like how to like really find that like sweet spot in terms of like what's a good amount of shows like on a monthly basis, let's say, and how to properly execute them. And I think we're still learning, like
Yeah.
we're all in life always just trying to get better at our thing we do, but yeah. Yeah, so I don't, I think now we're like slightly seasoned, but I'm still learning a little
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like I'm learning something every day. I'm learning something right now.
bit.
So, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
like, what you were saying about the flexibility. We've gotten onto amazing shows because of being able to be flexible. Sometimes we are locked in, like we're already committed to certain shows on the
Mhm.
day before and the day after. But like, if you have that flexibility, man, those shows can be amazing when it works out.
Yes, and and I've talked with bands before who said, well, they wouldn't be able to take their show on the road because of like maybe it was like their lighting setup. And I was like, oh, honey, like you have to figure that out. You can't not tour because of your lighting setup. Like that's, I mean, I know it's like I know it may be a huge part of your and not to say tour, not like this global tour, even a cross country tour, but like go hit a pocket of your corner of the US, do a little dance down the West Coast or something, so that way people in your general area can get eyes on you on a stage, because you've got fans in like these random pockets. But if you're like letting your lighting design prevent you from getting out there, and it's okay, no one's going to judge you like, oh well, I've seen their lighting on YouTube. Like, no, they're just glad to see you on a stage. So like
Hmm.
I think bands need to like sometimes be willing to like give and take, like what do we absolutely need if we're going to get out there and be able to take on some of these gigs and get ourselves on a stage and get ourselves on the road. And it might mean having to like curtail some of your full-blown live experience, but that's okay. You'll eventually get to a place where once you do all of this dance and can afford to bring your lighting designer on tour with you and or play a festival with your full-blown experience, then your fans will start to know that. They'll start to
Hmm.
realize like, oh, wait till you see them in their hometown, or wait till you see them at like Dark Force Fest. Like they'll understand. It's not like, so I think bands need to have that, like you say, like have that flexibility to be able to not to say that you need to have like a road ready kit, like, oh, you need us, get the kit, we're going, get the backpacks, we're going, but like it's yeah, just having that, like being able to just realize when an opportunity. We had a band, oh, I felt so bad. There was a huge tour that came through, and I knew about this tour over a year ago. It was booked in town. I don't want to like drop any names, but at the last minute, one of our, and this was like a sellout concert. One of our local bands got asked to open at the very last minute, like the week of the concert, and they just couldn't do it because it's a duo, and the other person has like actual work commitments, and they just couldn't do it because of work. And I was like, man. So that's like, there you talk about like the
Mm.
extreme circumstance where like, oh,
Hmm.
like, like
Yeah.
that perfect storm where it actually wouldn't work out, but they kind of are that band that is available sometimes. So yeah, so it's, just having that like flex. It's just the way it is, I think, when you're up and coming, and unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I do think like speaking to your like wisdom about being flexible and especially with your stage show, we played Dark Force Fest last year and we were the first band on for Saturday. We were very first band.
It's like 3 p.m., isn't
And
it, or is it earlier, I think, right?
one. We
Oh,
were
one.
on at one.
Yeah.
And we had played in Ohio the night before, so we did an overnight drive. Like got there just in time for load in at 10 a.m. We didn't even get a sound check because the sound was running late. They were sound checking the headlining bands, so we had to just like get on stage and play.
Hmm.
Just get up there and play, fueled by coffee, thanks to our wonderful people, that brought us coffee.
Yes.
And it was awesome. Like the community was awesome. And like they wanted to just have the experience of the whole festival, of the live music. And I think if you're just like willing to just remember that, where you're like, okay, I'm just gonna surrender to the fact that it might
Hmm.
not be like the perfect thing,
Hmm.
in my mind, like the perfect setup. Like I think if you kind of put that aside, like it's like really like
Absolutely.
when it comes down to it's the music. It comes down to the music.
Yep. Yeah. The fans don't care. They're not like, oh, that doesn't sound perfect or whatever. They just want that live experience.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. The energy of the show and the
Hmm.
music and
Yeah. So many
and
musicians
you.
like get
Yeah.
wrapped around the axle. They're like, oh my God, it didn't sound. I'm like, your audience are not the judges from Juilliard or like or whatever, or like whatever, like the America's like, best live music or music school is. It's like these are people who they're just glad to see you on a stage, and they maybe flew all the way across the country to be here. So they're just, and you didn't get your sound check, but at the end of the day, you all are professionals. And I know you can do this. Like if you don't get a full hour long set sound check, and I know you're like a little nervous and all that, but like it'll be fine. Like, and I think at the end of the day, the crowd is just, and half the crowd, hate to have to say it, they don't have the ear for, sometimes, and I've heard pitchy bands, and the crowd was blown away, and I'm not going to say anything, but I'm just like, that's who the audience is. And as soon
Hmm.
as the band can realize that, they can kind of take a step back and say like, okay, this doesn't need to be like the most perfect scenario where we got here on time and we had all that, and just be able to roll with it and have fun with it. And I think that can really like just change the whole experience for the band and make it less stressful and less worrisome, and to where like, they're apprehensive about doing that kind of thing, which opens more doors if they do that thing. So I would say, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
I wanted to ask actually, like, you've been like consistently growing Yes Music. I was just wondering, like, do you have like kind of a vision for the future, or are you feeling like you're kind of, are you happy with where you are? Or are you envisioning something different in the future?
No, it would be. I mean, we've already got a festival, which is it's a local festival. It's conservative. It's regional bands. It's a 2-day festival that we do in collaboration with the Coffin Club down in Portland that showcases Northwest artists. So I feel like that was a huge milestone to be able to do that. I think of things like having like I've got a buddy who's like, you guys should have a stage at like Capitol Hill Block Party, which is like a huge regional music festival in Seattle. It happens in Capitol Hill, Seattle, and they bring, like Chapel Roan like headlined it, and it's a kind of like electronic indie, and the Dark Cheese may played it, and so to have like a Yes stage, I think would be cool. Like these are things that I haven't actually taken steps to, like, I know the steps. It's like meeting the people to get the things in motion. So I know like that needs to happen, but I haven't taken those steps yet. But like that would be kind of cool to be able to book a even larger venue, like getting into some of the rooms that are like 500 plus. So bringing bands through, who still want to work with an independent promoter, who are kind of making it kind of into those like larger rooms would be super cool. Eventually, like who was I talking with the other day? It was like Yes Music Presents, where we've got like touring, concerts, like maybe artist management under like the Yes label. Like someday, I don't know if that's like super lofty, but like I think it's like, if I like, I don't know, like if I become independently wealthy somehow out of nowhere and I can like quit my day job, but I love my day job, like where I can just like focus like, 24 hours a day into like getting that to the next level, like maybe that could happen. But I think that would be kind of cool, is to, and then the question is like, would we take on other genres of music? I don't know, because like, Live Nation, the big ugly conglomerate, they book more than just, rock bands, they book everything.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that could be kind of cool, and to have staff who,
Hmm.
are like, no, like can do all the things, like would be kind of cool. But like, yeah, we'll see. I think right now it's kind of like weight loss. You don't want to like too much, like you take on too much and you're gonna fail at that goal, right? So you just want to like the little things that we can achieve. So I think booking that the 2-day festival down in Portland in conjunction with the Coffin Club was kind of like a big milestone, and just like seeing if we can set sights on like larger artists, and possibly getting ourselves like a stage at a regional festival, I think would be kind of interesting. Because and that then when we do that, now we're like exposing ourselves to like a whole bunch of people who have never been to our concerts before, because those people are just going to those festivals or whatever. So stay tuned on that. Please don't sit on the edge of your seat. But yeah, I think just like having the time to sit down and like do the investigative research to make those connections, to see if that's something that's feasible, I think that would be kind of cool, like down the road. So yeah, or just, I think right now, like just selling out more concerts. Let's dial it back even like a further
Mm.
notch, like
Hmm.
a few more sold out shows under our belt. I think would be kind of cool to just,
Yeah.
like have that. And because it works, it's a win-win for everybody. Like the fans are like, oh my god, it was an amazing concert, and then like the bands are like, oh my god, I sold out a concert, and we're like, oh my god, we had a sold out show. So it's a win-win across the board. So yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I
Hmm.
can see all the things though, all the things that you're
You
listing
see the
out.
vision.
I'm like, yes, I can see it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I
And
think,
then also like, yes music will be in every city too. I think I forgot that one. It'll be like, like
mm,
Yes Music Nashville, and like Yes Music NYC, and like the Yes Music DC. Yeah, it works, right?
It's funny because when I first started communicating with you, I assumed that you were like in multiple cities because that you have that kind of presence. You really do. And
Hmm.
so and I remember you were like, "Well, no, Tosh, we're just in Seattle for now." But I was like,
Yeah.
I could see this in the future.
Yeah,
So,
could we, and I've certainly talked with artists from different, we go to these festivals, right? And we get to talk with all the bands from all the different cities, and like, well, we don't have anybody in our city XYZ who's doing this kind of thing, or we do, but it's hit and miss or whatever. So like certainly there's definitely pockets of the country that don't have, like we're so fortunate to have in Seattle, we've got multiple promoter production companies, like obviously Mechanismus that does their annual festival, but like um Hierophant Booking in Seattle does, they do a lot of like death rock and metal and like dabble in some post-punk goth rock shows, and like and then we've got like dance night, like there's just, and then False Prophet hasn't done stuff in a while, but when they were doing things they were like bringing in some great, like the first time I ever saw Normal Bias was a False Prophet show. And just so we actually have like several in the city of Seattle, so I think we're like pretty fortunate, frankly, where other cities like might have no one that's really like an independent promoter who's like reining in all the, so but yeah, maybe finding like those pockets across the US that don't have, a presence. I think like way back when Yasha and I started like our, when she bought like a URL. We're like, should it be like yesmusicseattle.com or yesmusicproductions.com? And we're like, well, maybe we should keep it productions. That gives us flexibility, not to pigeonhole ourselves into Seattle.
mhm.
I was like, ooh.
Yeah. Yes.
Although our email
Absolutely.
is yesmusicseattle@gmail.com. So I don't know.
Well, it's a
But
start. It's a
yeah,
start.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. TBD. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. I think
sure.
that's like, well, I mean, like with any goal, like breaking it up into like the smaller bite-sized, like what are my steps to get there,
Yes.
it makes it
Yes.
doable.
Yeah, and folks ask us like, if we would want to book shows in like surrounding cities of, Everett or Tacoma, which if if you're from here, these are cities like 45 minutes to the north and south of us. And we have to take a look at like, no, what I want to do is make Seattle really good. And if we can't book shows here, send those bands as overflow to the surrounding cities so that those cities can start to build up their own scenes. And also I kind of don't want to drive like an I hate to have to say it. Like we want to keep this in our backyard. And a lot of times when you see us, like especially if it's a weeknight show, we were running straight from our day jobs to go to load in with the bands, and it's just logistically for us, it's just not really attainable to get on the road and spend an hour in traffic to go in, down to a neighboring city. So what I'd rather do is just start to feed bands down that way. And I've even told bands like, maybe next time you come through, don't hit Seattle again, but hit like Tacoma, Washington, which there's a pretty decent goth scene like building. It's not, if not, it's already there.
Hmm.
And so that way you hit some of those kids who didn't have the means to drive up to Seattle. And if you have fans in Seattle who like love you enough, they'll drive down, and so that
Yeah.
way that area is growing too. And so it kind of like takes, and also, I'll tell a band like, you were already here too soon, maybe go hit Tacoma, or like go hit
Hmm.
Bellingham, Washington, which is up near the Canadian border, so that way they're getting some love up there, but also you kind of were here 4 months ago, and maybe we need to like share the love, that kind of a thing. So yeah, so I think for right now, and I tell people, I'm like, I think we'll just stay here, but absolutely, if folks wants to start to take like bands to other neighboring cities, like, here, yeah, heck yeah, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah. Washington has a lot of great places to play that we've loved playing.
yeah. And there's
So,
definitely some pockets, and it's kind of like that thing where we talk about like Spokane, Washington, out where Electro
hmm.
Grave, Ryan Hollingsworth and his crew run everything. Smaller town, good thing, because they've got like the monopoly on the goth shows in town, because like it's them or nothing, which, and that's okay. Like, like all those kids are going to come out to that show because like that's like the thing in town, and then therefore it's a guaranteed thing for the artists. So you're going to get all 200 goth kids at that show that night if you go to that town. But in a bigger metropolis like New York City, like what are the million things going on a Friday night in Manhattan or whatever, or Brooklyn even alone, like,
Yeah.
so like hoping that they come to this one, like, so
Hmm.
yeah. So I think like, and people have found that like, that's just, hitting those pockets can be really beneficial too. So yeah, yeah. So
Oh,
yeah, for right
yeah.
now, long story long, even longer, is like we're gonna stay focused on Seattle, as it were, but like, I never say never.
I'm really looking forward to seeing like how things unfold. because I feel like it's always very cool to see at least what you're sharing out on socials. Like I love seeing your shares about the different shows that you're at, not just your own, but just all the different shows. And it's just like I feel like it feels like the Seattle community is thriving in the music community.
Yes, we definitely are. There's like new dance nights that are popping up. Like a bunch of us went and saw Molchat Doma just came through town, sold out concert. Oh, so good. Like I honestly feel like they are the new Depeche Mode. Like they really came into their own. Their new album is just really has defined who they are as artists. Their sound has morphed since they first started. And but anyway, we all made our way over to this new dance night that's happening, and it was just popping, and I was just like, this is cool, like to see like these new nights that are popping up, and just like a lot of different opportunities. We've got a local guy in town who's going to be a good friend who runs a dark Seattle event calendar, and it just jam packed with stuff going on. So there's really, if people seek it out, there's just a ton of stuff going on, whether it be like the dance nights, huge concerts coming through, smaller independent concerts, um, new bands like divey shows on a Tuesday, like mid-sized shows on a Saturday, like we're going on a Monday. Like it's just there's no like shortage of like kind of cool, dark kind of music things going on in this town right now. And then we've got the big, what do they call it? The industrial music summer camp they're referring to, Mechanismus, coming up in like a couple months. So
Yep.
yeah, the
Yes.
homecoming, whatever they call it. Yeah. Where all the German industrial bands poor Ollie. Oh my gosh, it was like last year. We were at like it was like night 3 or whatever it was, for Mechanismus Festival, and it was like at El Corazon in town, and I I know Ollie's head is on a swivel through that whole thing, but it's such a family affair, right? And it's such a big part of our like cornerstone of our industrial music community in Seattle, and people come in. But like I remember being at El Corazon for like the third night, I think, and I saw a German industrial band, Funker Vote. I was standing at like stage left, near the access point to like backstage, and I'm like watching whoever, I think it was like DSTR, Daniel Meyer was on stage, and I happened to like look over and glance to like backstage, and I saw like the guys in Funker Vote like on a broom go riding by backstage. They were like, they took like the brooms and they're just like dancing and because they are like hijinks, like they're on stage, they're like serious and they deliver the music precision. They are nothing but hijinks. And so just getting to see I texted Ali and I was like, Funker Vote just went by in a broom backstage. He's like, shh. He came running. He like beelined across that venue. Like it was like, just like to see all and so like basically the moral of that story is that like, like when that event happens, that is a huge family affair. And it's between like the hijinks and the jokes and the guys are running like a central command center at the Crocodile, where they run that festival primarily. And, they're like, they got food for days, and it's a family operation. And so just to see like it be like a community family affair when that event happens, like that's the cornerstone of our Gothic industrial scene here in Seattle. And so I know that like that's like a big part of why we've got such a I would say a pretty robust scene in the city, is because of like that like sort of family oriented community that they created like 15 plus years ago now. So yeah. So
That's
if anybody
amazing.
goes to that festival, Funker Vote is playing it again, I believe, this year, and just be on the lookout for hijinks, because those guys are they are a hoot, let me tell you. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does feel like a reunion. The first time I actually participated at Mechanismus was actually playing for System Sin in
Mm,
2019. That was my first experience with it. And then Alice played in 2022 with System Sin as well.
okay.
And so, but like all the times, like it's like you get to see all of your friends and all these different bands from all over and make
Mm-hmm.
new friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's part of the fun, is just getting to reconnect with everyone and, you
Yes, and
know,
collaborations are born. I would say,
oh,
like
for
any up and coming
sure.
band, that's another thought. Like, get yourself out to one of these festivals. I know you're gonna pay money. You're gonna have to, even if you're not playing it, just get out to Dark Force, get out to Mechanismus or Terminus, um, and meet everybody there, because and exchange information, because I feel like that's how some of these collaborations are born. And or like, hey, I'm gonna remix your music, and it's cool to see that happen. Like with artists, like when on the smaller potato side of it all, like Nuda.
Hmm.
So Drew Grozovich, who is, I call him the Druda. He's the Drew in Nuda. He's her drummer. he met her, and I don't want to say it was because of me, but like I think we largely Yes Music had a part to do with it. But like basically, I brought him in, and he DJ'd a show. What show was it? She was opening for. I think she might have been opening for an artist, or she was on stage, or I can't remember how it went, but like she was on stage, and he was the DJ, and they met. And then like I think like the rest is history after that. After they met, I think she maybe wanted to bring in a live drummer. And so he's been her live drummer now ever since that. And so like I love seeing that to where, and then from there he had the opportunity to go play like Neotropolis and do some other collaborations with some other artists and stuff. So just like see that happen, and just by like being physically at an event or at a show or at a festival and getting out there and meeting and have your little business cards and all that kind of stuff, um, and because like who knows you're going to meet and who may be looking for a keyboard player or whatever the case may be. And so yeah, that's definitely, it's you'd have to get that plane ticket and go get that hotel, but I think it'll pay off in dividends later on by just putting yourself out there like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's actually, we met Nuda at Mechanismus, because we
Hmm.
played the same day, and then Nuda ended up playing with us in Spokane later on, and so like I already felt like a kindredship from
Hmm.
those experiences, and so when we needed a keyboard player, I was like, "Hello, would you like to come play with us, please?" So
I
yeah,
love
so I
that.
love that.
And I love the voice. That's how you kind of want to talk to her because she's so little, like
I know. She's
in a great way.
adorable.
But don't underestimate her. Like she packs a lot of
No,
punch. Like the
yes,
talent,
she
and it's
does.
just, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah, but no, it's true. I have friends like Eric Gottesman who plays in so many bands.
Yes.
But that you really do meet a lot of amazing people that you can collaborate with,
Hmm.
and especially like it's one of those things like you were mentioning remixes and or even playing shows together. Like, you
Hmm.
know, a lot of magic can happen at the festivals for sure.
Yes, and I love when I see like we've had like bands on stage that like build like I think I don't know if it was the first time, but when we had Dark Cheese May open for Male Tears, I don't know if that was like the kickoff point where they kind of became like besties. But I think like a really after that show, at least like the friendship like went even further than it had been before, and they've like collaborated since then, and they like message each other, and I'm just like, oh my god, that's awesome. Like, so like seeing those kind of like relationships born at these like live events, especially in situations like a festival where you otherwise are not going to see these artists who are across the country, and finally like those bands from Denver are coming in, or like those bands from Jersey are coming in, and we're all in like one place. So it's definitely like a huge opportunity. And constantly people are asking like, well, hey Elizabeth, I can send you like bookers in Sacramento and Portland and Vancouver and all up and down the West Coast. But like my knowledge of who's booking out in on the East Coast is pretty limited. But let me tell you, if like you start to meet bands on the East Coast because you did that thing and started to get to know them and met them at a festival, they play the East Coast all the time because that's where they are. They know who the Jersey, the DC, like the Pittsburgh, like or the Philly bookers are and all that. And so that's going to be like a great conduit into that the other coast. So I think that's another a huge bit of information you can leverage from coming to like going to a festival and meeting bands from the other areas of the country. Is they know who all the talent buyers are. So when you want to take the show on the road from Sacramento to like New York City or whatever, and up to like Boston, then guess what? You've got a relationship now with that band you met at like Absolution Fest or whatever. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah, the it's like the relationships are really like the key to like getting like, oh my gosh, like where do I start, how do I find out who are the talent buyers across the country? Like we'll meet those bands because guess what, they've been around it for a while and they know who
Yeah.
they're because they've done some East Coast tours or whatever, or some tours through like Georgia and Oklahoma or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really big part of it. It's like I find for the most part that the music community as a whole is so helpful. Like everybody wants to help each other. And so
Hmm.
like when you reach out to people, like, it's like, hey, I'm struggling with this region. And most people are so helpful with their like, oh, okay, have you tried
Hmm.
this? And vice
Yes.
versa. Like it's like you were mentioning at the very, very first of our chat, like all the boats rise together. So,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know.
Yep. Yep. And I never like withhold information. Like, I've amassed like a list of talent buyers and stuff. And if a band reaches out because they're trying to like DIY book their own little tour, I'm like, yeah, here, reach out to these people. And if you need to drop a name that I like passed you off to them, then please do. Because who am I
Hmm.
to like gatekeep this information? Like, because if
Yeah,
we all succeed, then the whole industry as itself does better. And then we can start to see like more of our artists at bigger mainstream festivals. Like we're starting to see more gothic industrial bands playing South by Southwest, which this is a good
yeah,
thing. This is, yeah.
hmm,
Like let's not
yeah,
keep it all like contained right here. Let's like I'm gonna share the wealth with you so you can go and like you can go do the good things, and then that music's going to grow and flourish, and your nights in San Antonio and wherever are going to grow and flourish, and then from there you're going to get more notoriety, and you're going to make it at big festivals, and then we're going to work together and then sell more tickets
yes.
because you did really well. It's the whole like it's like the ecosystem, right? So yeah,
Hmm. Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
I'd say.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's like a big part of it though. It's like it does take time. It does take time
Yes, being patient.
to build and,
Absolutely.
like when we first started touring, we went from doing like little weekends to a week long
Yep.
it's like you build up your stamina and it takes
Hmm.
time,
Yep.
you
Have the
know.
patience. Yep.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like again, I think as well, like talking about the love and the joy for it, you really do have to love it because,
Hmm.
it's
It
some
will
work.
wear on you. There's going to be highs and
Yeah.
lows, and yeah, yeah. And so and it's fair to have those down days, but just realize why you did it all in the first place, I think. And I think that will prevail over some of those like low points, whether it be touring,
Yeah.
ticket sales, concerts, running into some bad apples here and there, whatever the case may be. I think remembering why you did this in the first place, remembering, all the good points of it all, and I think that will prevail at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, having patience, perseverance. I feel like we need to get a tattoo. Like I feel like these are like the hallmarks of like some good ink, right? Like patience and
Yes.
perseverance and grace and just following a lot of follow through too. Mhm.
Yeah. So this is a really specific, very specific question, because I know that you put so much love and time and energy into your shows. Um, like, could you walk us through like just an average show? Because I'm sure each show is different, but just an average show, like what goes into it and how much, roughly how much time it takes to put it all together.
Like, are you talking about like including the workup or just like day of
Hmm.
show? Like,
Yeah, yeah, the whole thing.
oh, Jesus, oh gosh, I'd have to like do an hour report on. It's really a case by case basis. Like some bands, like you hear from them once or twice, you exchange the tech writer and they're good. Other bands are shoulder tapping you every day because they just want to make sure everything's going to be buttoned up. I swear, like some tour managers I've had on speed dial. Uh, like if I haven't woken up to an email from them, they want to know what the ticket sales are and stuff. So I think it's case by case, but it's about a 3 to 6 month workup for a national tour. Um, six like 9 months plus for like an international. But just getting your dates locked in and figuring out like the who your support acts are going to be if you're not bringing support acts with you, like talking to your local promoter or talent buyer so they can find a support act, and getting the perfect date lined up. And then once you get that date lined up, sometimes you have to challenge a date, which means that you're not the only one who has a hold on that date. There's like 5 people for you, let's say. And once you have your ducks in a row saying like, okay, we're ready, we want that date, and then the venue says, cool, it's yours, or cool, it's not, because the guys before you actually, they were ready to go. And so great, now I get to go look for a new venue. And so until you find like that perfect venue, and like once you get that venue locked in and the lineup announced, all right, when do we want to announce the tour? Let's get some ads going for it, and like let's get that official announced, and then let's start promoting the heck out of it so that way we can make sure we've got the most quote unquote asses in seats on the day of the show. And then getting your tech writer buttoned up to where when you send that over, I've already communicated well in advance with the venue what they need so that they can do their job well to set you up for success. That way when you're on stage, it's not all weird. If we need to get the appropriate backline, so that way just in case you're not touring with your full drum kit, just do that well in advance. So that way, day of show, it's all on stage, it's ready to go, and we can like open doors on time.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
just triage things as they come up. But like if not, like we've got a set schedule. We'll the run of show will stick to, and if we have to deviate because of a little snafu on stage, then we will just fly as we go along. But for the most part. Usually things run pretty well, give or take a handful, maybe a few minutes laterally to the left or right. But yeah. And then after marketing, after show promotion is like I'm a big person about that because now we need to capture all the people who didn't go to the show. The people who are like, oh my God, I didn't know about that. Or like, I'm having FOMO because I'm looking at all the photos and videos and Insta lives that you guys did. So I'm all about like after show promo.
Hmm.
That way, the next time we capture those people where they're like, oh,
Yeah.
I missed that one. That looked like a good one. Damn it. You know. So like, yeah, never skimp on the after show promotions or bringing in a photographer or your best friend who kind of knows how to do video with their, everybody knows how to do video. Like just get like a friend with their phone, get some like footage just so people can like, we can capture those people the next time around who get the FOMO from the what they like, oh darn, like we saw from last night that looked pretty good actually. Damn it, So I'm always all about
Yeah.
that. But yeah, just yeah, reach out to your local talent buyers and your bookers and your promoters like probably 6 months once you know like that you want to get on the road. And so I've had actually bands reach out like so far in advance. Like we had one venue in town that was like what you want like next August or whatever. And I was like, yeah, and
Hmm.
sometimes you'll throw them up like, okay, put the hold in, or whatever. Hold on the date. And some venues are like, I don't even know. Oh my gosh. One time a venue was like, I don't know if we're gonna even be around by then. And I was like, oh no, don't say that. So like, but like, yeah, just I would say in terms of like shoulder tapping your promoters all the time though, like be mindful, and even especially with talent buyers is because they all have a billion other shows they're booking. And so just to like be mindful of everybody's time and to really, and I've learned too, even with myself, is like the advance is the thing that's going to communicate all the things of the show. So like the advance is going to come, it's going to have all the instructions for the show. So you don't need to like, oh, hey, by the way, can you let me know? Like, don't worry about it. We will advance the show. We will do it right. And it's going to have all the details, everything you need to know. I may reach out to you early because if you might need lodging, we might need to get that buttoned up sooner than later,
Hmm.
or backline. But for the most part, like you don't need to ask me, a million questions because I'm gonna have that all spelled out in the advance. And then after that, if you have some questions, that way, and I'm even learning to do this better myself, is like we minimize email traffic to the venues. I did have, and I've gotten my slap on the wrist, but like basically we had a show once where like the talent buyer was like, you had like a record number of emails. I was like, I'm sorry. But like it was like the band was asking me a million questions. And I was like subsequently asking them, which I've gotten better now to like table those questions, and we'll button that all up during the advance portion of a show. So like really just save all your questions. We'll get it all hammered out in the advance. But if there is anything that you think like needs that premeditation, to make sure to like communicate that with your promoter well in advance, so they're not having to like find a drum kit the day before, or like we need a place to stay, or oh, we'd like to have our buddy open, he's with us by the way, like or something like that,
Yeah.
like but yeah, just giving like the milestones of the pre-show workup of getting your date, getting that buttoned up, figuring out your lineup, and then figuring out like what gear is going to be needed, and then when you want to announce the tour, and making sure your listeners are get the tour announcement via bands in town and
Hmm.
Bandcamp and all that, the song kick. I've had some bands where I'm like, you don't have a bands in town, do you? So recently, like
Yes.
I've been doing the thing where I email our bands. I'm like, hi, I'm getting this all set up and making
Hmm.
sure like that they get your fans get the announcement drop, and your album drops are going to come through. So making sure that all happens too, because
Yep.
that's huge.
Hmm.
If like they don't see it on Bandcamp, or if they don't see it on Spotify, then that's highly problematic because that's where a lot of people are getting the music. So
Yeah.
so yes, all those little like milestones through and I'm doing a really good job, so I'll be like reaching out to the bands, like, but all those milestones working out to so I told you it's like Christmas, like here we are, like all that work up, now we're at Christmas Day and we execute the show, and then in one fell swoop it's over. And, and I've actually had bands where I'm like, well, I'm gonna miss like not like talking to you every day, like and having you on speed dial and texting you every day to make sure everything's all buttoned up. But yeah. um but yeah, I'd say like for anybody, that's the advance will take care of all of the logistics. So just allowing for that to naturally happen as it should. If it doesn't happen within a timely manner, I'd say a couple probably a couple weeks out before the show. That's when you, if you're booking independently as an artist with a venue and you haven't gotten your advance from the venue, you need to be reaching out and saying like, okay, I just need to know. We've had shows that were not ours. Oh my gosh, where like I was like, hey, I'm coming to your show tonight. What time you guys go on? They're like, well, we haven't gotten the schedule yet. And I'm like, the show's tonight.
Oh.
How do you not have that? I'm like, oh no.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we've had
yeah,
that experience where they switched the venue on us the day of the show and they didn't tell us the right time to show up. So that's happened. So we really appreciate when people are organized and tell us
yeah.
ahead of time, especially when there are like last minute changes and stuff. So,
Hmm.
yes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Um, Saren Dareth is saying it's a lot of work. It absolutely is. Like, for us artists, we have such a deep appreciation for what y'all do. Like, truly, thank you so much for the love and work and all the things that you do to make this possible.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I mean, it's, at the end of the day, like I remember talking to somebody once and they're like, oh, you like doing all that? And I was like, yeah, like because I'm not the artist. I can't sing, but I love watching the artist. So I'm gonna do this thing to make that, to make you being on stage happen. And so, and everybody has, it's like I always go back to like a military operation. Not everybody is like combat infantry. Like there's all these support roles that happen to make the full thing successful. And the show is the same thing, whether it be stagehands, you've got your merch crew, your front of house engineers, your lighting designers, your techs, your bar managers, like all these people make this whole thing successful. And so in order for you to do the thing that you do, which is like be on stage and be beautiful and make beautiful music happen and engage the crowd, we're going to do the things that we need to do to make that, so make it happen. And that's how I see it. So, and it's
Yeah,
it's a lot of moving parts. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yep. Yep.
yeah. Well, I do feel like you're an artist. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of creativity that goes into it. Like, the fact that you can just like shift gears and, think like probably have to think outside the box when you're problem solving too. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
probably like thinking on
Mm-hmm.
your feet. So, I mean, there's so much creativity that's involved in that.
Oh yeah, like we had one major tour that came through and I remember we did a full lineup swap. I'm sorry, like a full concert swap with Portland based on two huge conflicting concerts that had gotten well, it was a major tour scheduled in our cities. And I was like, I hit up the coffin club. I was like, if we swap our dates completely, it'll work because they're gonna hit there when you have the thing, and they're gonna hit here when I have the thing. So we just swap, then we're not hitting when we have the thing. But that didn't mean just taking like that meant taking it was like two concerts that had multiple tours. And it was
Mm,
it was like this, like, oh my God. Like, and just like the artistry of that, being able to like, okay, and then like, okay, well, if you change your date, that means that you have to like in the whole thing, and like it worked. And you're like, holy crap, I don't ever want to have to do that again. But like there's definitely an art in that. I tell you.
absolutely.
And being able to like, it's like I have compared to like a quick reaction, like SWAT response force, like being able to just like the scheduling and the being able to like make sure it all works out, and like, or like losing a venue and having to find a new venue. And it's just, we recently had this happen with our at the Coffin Club, our collaborative festival, where they got thrown into a tizzy with an emergency construction situation for rezoning unexpectedly, and having to like just reconfigure artist payout and how many tickets we could sell, and moving um the whole festival from their one live music space to the other one. And just there's definitely like an art in being able to do like kind of quick reaction operations and logistics, which I'd almost argue that it's like more that than, than anything. And if you can take that
Yeah,
off of the shoulders of the talent buyer or of the owner of the venue, then that's huge, I would
yeah,
say. Like, because they've got a billion other things that they're worrying about, like liquor sales and like like security and all the other like working toilets or whatever, like, yeah, all the million
yeah,
things that people have to like worry about in the operations that like the lights are on, like. So yeah, if you can like run interference on the logistical side of a show, then like that's, yeah, I'd say that's like you can, I'm a graphic designer, so I do the design for our stuff, but like you can always hire a designer, but like to be able to like run the logistical side of a show, like, and we've like I've largely been kind of like production where we've booked at venues that have their own production manager, and I was like, oh, okay, just feels lovely to have you have like this
Yes.
all buttoned up. So yeah, because they had like a person that actually did the whole thing and they were in charge of the LD and the in front of house and security and all of that. So I was like, okay,
Yes.
I guess I'll just watch the show at this point. Like, So yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, it definitely makes you appreciate it like when you're wearing many hats and you
Mhm.
have like more people helping, like it makes you very, very grateful when that happens.
Yes. Like, okay, I'm gonna go get a drink then, I guess. Or like,
It's
so chill out for a minute. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, great question.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for like again, like all the things that you do. And thank you for taking the time to chat with me and to share your wisdom and your just beautiful joy and heart with us. Like I really, really appreciate
Oh,
it.
well, thank you for saying that. Well, I appreciate you like inviting me on this. Like, holy crap, you know, like I revere you guys. Like, out you, like you're amazing, and so I'm like
Thank
I can't
you.
believe that you're asking me. But yeah, thank you. Like, and like absolutely. Now you know a gal if you ever want to come back through as Alice.
Yes, please. I would absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Like, I don't know, I just feel like what you offer as a person that truly loves music, like foundationally, like I think that any artist would be so lucky to get to work with you. So,
Oh, well, thank you so much.
yes.
Oh, I
Yes.
appreciate that so much. You hear that? Okay.
It's
I'm kidding. Kind of serious.
you can quote me on your EPK.
Yes, this whole thing.
Well, I just wanted to tell our audience thank you so much for hanging out with us and tuning in and for your wonderful questions. And for anybody that is coming to Seattle, please support Yes Music Productions. Any show really, but we love Yes Music Productions
Oh,
and we
well,
love
thank you
you,
for that.
Elizabeth. So yes, thank you so much again.
Thank you. All right. Well, it was great talking with you.
Yes, likewise. Have a wonderful Sunday.